so we don't miss any of the wonderful goodness. Yeah. So is everybody who's joining an East Coaster, or is this like early for you? You're on the West Coast. Oh, I saw Lauren Hong just come in. I know you're Lauren, unless you're traveling, you're on the West Coast. So God bless you for joining us at 9 in the morning. So I'm just going to give everybody a minute to trickle in. Thanks again to all those who were early and on time. All right. So since it's 12:01, I'm going to be respectful of everybody's time and just get us started. So I'm going to start with introductions. First of all, thank you guys for joining today. So we're tackling the all-important issue of lead generation and how to do it the right way and the most optimal way possible. So looking forward to tackling that with my two esteemed colleagues. So I'll just start with introductions. I'm Allie Zendrian. I'm the founder of AtoZ Communications, doing public relations in the financial services space. So if any of you guys are interested, feel free. But more importantly, I have two marketing dynamos on this webinar with me. So I'll kick things off. So Allie McCarthy and Joe. So if you guys want to do a quick intro for everybody, and then we'll get started.
Well, thank you for having me, Allie, and it's great to be here with you, Joe. So I'm Allie McCarthy. I have been in the industry for 24 years, all in marketing. And right now I am doing fractional CMO work. So it's with Amplify Your Voice, my company. That's me. That's what I do. I amplify your voice. And I'm taking all of my experience and leveraging it to help fintechs, investment bank firms, RIAs, so everyone in the financial services ecosystem. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey, and I would not change any step of it. So I love that I have a lot of demand gen war stories to share with everyone today. So happy to be here with my friends, Joe and Allie. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Same, Allie and Allie. Wonderful to be with both of you. We've done quite a bit of work together. Go back quite a ways. I'm Joe Kozeniewski, Joe Koz for those who can't pronounce it. Head of growth marketing at Powerlytics, and Powerlytics is a data fintech provider. We've been in business a little over 10 years, and mostly in the banking and credit union space. Now branching out to bridge that gap in the wealth management financial advisory space. We provide better data for better outcomes, we call it. Consumer and business information for support of marketing, lending, risk outcomes, things like that. And we are launching a new product very soon called True Wealth. It is a SaaS-based platform for advisors to use to find demographic and marketing data to really power their lead gen and prospecting efforts.
Thank you both for that. And so just as a reminder to everyone, so as Allie mentioned, so we've got war stories, we've got tips and tricks to teach everybody and to share back and forth. So feel free throughout the webinar, if you want to use the chat, if you want to use the Q&A, I'll be watching both. So feel free, if you have any questions, we will get to as many of them as humanly possible. But so kicking us off, so the issue of lead generation. So it seems like in the industry, if you're trying to build your lead gen on faulty data or false assumptions, it's just going to go askew from there. You really have to start with getting the basics all correct, and then you can start building out from there. How would you guys feel about that? How can things kind of go askew if you don't have the data the right way?
Well, I'll put perspective on it from the sense of if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. So firms have a lot of data available to them. Now, is it the data that they need to grow? Is it the data that you need to be able to serve your clients the best way and to prospect beyond, you know, getting referrals from existing clients? So I think that, you know, when we talk about data, it's always, oh my gosh, it's such a big, you know, a big headache that firms have to solve. And so I think that, you know, we have a lot of tools available to us. And I think one important aspect of it is kind of helping to get your house in order from a marketing and communications perspective, because sometimes you can kind of decouple what you need the data for. And so it'd be great, Joe, to kind of add your perspective on how you're helping firms with, you know, from the marketing and sales function. And that can really allow at least the folks here to say, okay, you may not be able to solve all the data problems in your firm or address all the issues of how to have great data, you know, through and through, but you can start to take steps. Like there's available resources to us to be able, as marketers, to take steps to be able to do it. Because sometimes what I find people like, oh, it's a mess, and they kind of throw up your hands and you're like, I can't do anything now. And that's not true. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be a new tool or option or some disruptor out there. So it's like, what are you able to do today to be able to take steps to get your job done today? And I think that's where it's interesting where you come in, Joe, and the work you're doing, because I feel like you are empowering marketing and sales folks to be able to kind of go forward today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No. And I think you guys know me, and I know probably a lot of you on the call know me. I'm not quite as kind-hearted maybe as Allie comes across. I think I'm definitely kind of, you know, a sales guy deep down in my brain. You know, and using that marketing, I'm much more focused on lead gen, prospecting, ROI. You know, every dollar, every hour I spend on marketing, I want it to result in $2 coming back in for revenue. So I think a lot of times with data, you end up just kind of just using the wrong data, and you just waste a lot of time and money and opportunity. That those chances slip by. The competitors might get, you know, the prospects you're going after, and you spend a lot of money and don't see a lot of return. Is the biggest question I always get from different firms, from different advisors. You know, well, how do I measure my success? How do I measure my return? And to me, it's a prospect in the door, and then ultimately a customer in the door. The other piece that I find quite often that I think would really apply to a financial services audience is that link between marketing and sales. And being a marketing person, I'm fortunate that I have, you know, kind of a great sales team further down the pipe for this. But for a lot of advisors, a lot of these smaller firms, I know you're kind of wearing multiple hats and you're doing all the jobs. There's nothing that I feel worse about than having bad data come in, maybe having a lead, passing it to sales that I think is qualified and it's not, and you just kind of spin your wheels then. And I want to keep that relationship between marketing and sales, whether it's the same person, same teams, different teams. I want to keep that going well. I want to keep that going smoothly. I want to keep that trust there. And so it's basically garbage in, garbage out. If I'm getting bad leads, you know, using bad data to get bad leads that then result to bad sales, it's not good for anybody. So that's always kind of my biggest goal. I want to I want to use the good data, get qualified leads, and then hand them to sales on a silver platter, close it, and make that money.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love everything that you guys were adding to that conversation. I feel like from a PR perspective, it's the equivalent of, you know, we'll create a media list for a press release or pitches or things like that. And when you get those lists where, you know, you get email bounce backs, or, you know, you get a reporter who's no longer there, or that's not their beat anymore, it's so embarrassing. And, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but Jim Pavia used to like post when PR people would do something wrong. You would just feel so horrified, like, oh my God, I never want to make this list. I will just like die that day. So, you know, it's so important. And I'm glad that we're addressing this issue. So just to get a baseline from everybody, I have a poll. Just wanted to get a sense how you guys are doing as far as do you feel like you're getting the kind of leads that you want with the data that you have available to you? Because all of this is happening at the same time. So we've got the great wealth transfer happening, and everybody seems to be competing for those high net worth clients. So it seems like, you know, it's more people, lots of data coming from all different places. It could be a hot mess pretty easily, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think
So
one.
we've got almost everybody participating so far, and so everybody's we'll just show how we're doing, and I think it's pretty honest. So thank you guys for your honesty in that. So how successful are you in finding your right prospects? Somewhat. So I think, a good gauge of, we could be doing better. Obviously, I'm glad that it's not at all. That would obviously feel horrible. So congrats to everybody on the call for their success thus far. But yeah, so how do you feel like at this time, at this juncture in the industry, how are you guys sussing through there's so much pressure and you just got to deliver?
Well, I think a lot of our firms, I mean, everyone relies on the marketer to lean in and help, right? This is where we flex our superpowers and our muscles and being able to contribute to the success and growth. And so I think that this industry has grown up on getting referrals from existing clients, and that has been the growth mechanism. And I remember, about probably 2015, 2016, where it was like, prior to that, you could have been an either or, CMO. You could have been a tech CMO or a more branding, CMO. And I started to see this shift of like, no, 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 everyone's a tech. There is no, we're just printing brochures and there's this digital group. And so I think that but that's young, right? These changes are pretty young for our industry. And so I remember working with Joe, and it was like he came in and he had all this foundational knowledge about, how do you find new people, and, how do you go out there and tell your story and make it land. And I think that like these larger organizations, it's harder to move as fast. I think so. There's this catch up that's happening, where these levels of sophistication for marketing groups is growing with digital capabilities and using, the different tools that we have to kind of attract people, net new people to our business. But if you're a smaller firm, like Joe had mentioned, you're already wearing all these hats. So you're like, well, holy smokes, where do I begin with this? This is very overwhelming. And so but we all know that we need to put ourselves out there and we need to tell our authentic stories. And, this is where, folks like Joe and having that, kind of digital marketer that's, helping you behind the scenes and being able to say, okay, this is how you go through the data. This is how you find the right target audience. But I think it starts with you as a business really knowing what you're looking for. Do you have a specialization, right? Could I sit with Joe today and say, okay, this is exactly the type of person I'm looking for. This is the type of profile, and now go find them. And that's what, your firm does, Joe. And that's what's so great about it. But it's like, it's incumbent upon us to be good partners and say, okay, I know who I am and I'm ready to find them. And I think that that's where firms are right now. They're like, okay, where do I go through the clutter? How do I break through that noise? Where do I really connect at that human level with, the person that I'm trying to attract? Because it's been so easy because we've had them in our book, right? We've been working with people. Now we have to go find new, and that's a really different muscle that you're flexing from a corporate perspective. And so I think it'd be great, kind of, Joe, for you to walk through how you all do that. What is your model? Because I think it's really interesting what you're doing there.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. So yeah, so I totally agree with you, and I think that I kind of look at data and marketing, and especially for financial services, that there's like levels of sophistication, and um, obviously you hit on a good point. I've talked to a million advisors, a million business owners, and I'll say, who's your ideal client? Who's your target? What's your value prop? Things like that, and those are hard questions to answer. I mean, if you grilled me right now, I'd say, okay, well, I have to sit and think about that. So to go back to your point, I think that's what you and Allie do very well, working with people and saying, let's talk about your value prop. Let's talk about your branding. Let's talk about what you offer that the competition doesn't. How do you reach them? And then what companies like Powerlytics or these data providers can do is help you find those people. So I'd look at kind of, I mean, you even mentioned it, like kind of referrals. I think referrals are the baseline of how you're finding new customers. And let's be honest, they're not a ton coming in. Probably they might not be qualified. It's always, oh, my sister-in-law needs an advisor. Do you want to talk to her, type of thing, which can or cannot pay off. I think once you start getting a bit more sophisticated and using that data, it kind of comes in tiers. You have kind of that basic demographic data. You have the age, income, occupation, maybe home ownership, and that can get you there. A lot of times it's not necessarily accurate, or it's self-reported, or it's very kind of bland and generic. Kind of that next level of sophistication where Powerlytics will come in then is that financial data. And I think that that's really powerful, helpful for kind of scoring and ranking those prospects, segmenting. You can slice and dice anything. Like I said, with this True Wealth product we're launching, it's providing all investable assets, net worth, everything based off of IRS returns and other algorithms and sources. So very accurate, very precise, but really kind of takes you to that next level. Do you want to look at someone with this much investable assets? Do you want that to be liquid? Do you want those to be retirement assets, type of thing? Where and then how do you reach out to them? And then I'd say even kind of that step beyond, and this would be kind of what the three of us are probably well versed in, that I wouldn't expect, the average person to really get into, would be that behavioral data. And that's the type of thing that really, really excites me as a marketer. Um, Tracking email opens and click rates and event attendance and things like that. I love kind of gauging that balance between intent and activity. And so what I mean by that is, I always love when an advisor or client will say, "Oh, well, I had a ton of likes on that LinkedIn post. That's going to say, yes, that's very good. And it's great awareness and things like that. Now, does that translate to a prospect or business? Maybe not. It's kind of that combination of that branding and awareness, and then that lead gen. So something like liking a LinkedIn post is very kind of low effort, but sort of also low intent. Whereas signing up for a webinar is kind of higher intent. Attending a webinar is really high intent, and then submitting a form, I mean, is the highest intent of all, or reaching out or calling or emailing someone. So, like I said, that's kind of like a step beyond, and that's sort of what professional marketing and like Allie and both of you do. But I think that's I would think that most of the people on our call now would really be interested in kind of that demographic and that financial data, and using that just beyond referrals.
Well, and to address one of the questions in there where it's how do you define an MQL? I think that, a lot of what you're saying, Joe, bakes into the definition of an MQL, right? It's like, did you just engage, but I'm still going to watch you. If it's a low level engagement, like liking a post or, maybe visiting the website, it still doesn't mean I'm going to mark you as an MQL, but I'm not going to abandon you. I might retarget you or try to nurture you. I would say the folks that qualify, in my opinion, for the MQLs, and again, every business is slightly different, would be the ones that, again, registered for a webinar, attended that webinar, filled out a form to either, get a demo or to contact, so I don't know that there's any secret, in that every business is different. And so you have to think about what a hand raiser means for your business and your sales team, because it's going to change depending if you're like a SaaS firm. Like if you're a tech SaaS firm, the demo is the holy grail of an MQL. If you're a more complex, like platform provider or a TAMP or something, it could be a different definition. It could be, attending a webinar is the holy grail because that advisor took time out for your education, and education is important when you're, so I really think you have to look at all those different opportunities and touch points for as a marketer that you're actually using as a firm, and then say, okay, can we agree that this is the right level of action to be able to qualify you for an MQL? And Joe, I know you have probably plenty to add on that because that's your whole career too.
I was gonna say, now you're speaking my language. No, and I think for those marketing qualified leads, I think it's probably vastly different for my purposes, for your purposes, for an advisor's purposes, for the home office purposes. In my case, like I said before, like liking a social media post is not necessarily high intent. I don't want to say take it as seriously, but I might not rank that as higher priority. Whereas for, for an advisor, when you have this kind of smaller book or whatever, maybe that is appropriate. You see, oh, so-and-so liked my post. Maybe it's appropriate to reach out, or maybe, kind of keep them in mind. I always try to keep, it's kind of, I hate to use the other term, but like the prospect and customer journey. And it's a lot of, I always keep a scoring methodology in my mind. We have, obviously, as professional marketers, we have a lot of tools to do this, but even if you don't, even if it's smaller business or an advisor, just kind of tracking that. And for example, okay, for every email opened, I might in my mind give somebody, okay, that's 5 points. Okay, they opened an email, I sent them an email, they at least opened it. Okay, did they click through? Did they actually do what I wanted them to do? Okay, maybe that's 10 points. Did they attend a webinar? That's 50 points. At what point did they get to 100 points? To me, that's an MQL. That's a marketing qualified lead. That's okay to talk to sales. Obviously, that's a lot of activity. You can kind of move that gauge up and down, but I think you kind of, again, you kind of balance that level of activity and then the intent behind the activity. And that's sort of where you rely on sales teams. Like I said, we have a wonderful sales team at Powerlytics that we're in very close contact, and they'll say, just because somebody opened 5 emails and you told me to reach out to them, or that's not, or what were the emails? Were they generic blog update emails, or were they emails based on what type of business they're running? So yeah, I think it's all kind of personal, but I kind of like that, keeping that journey in mind, and sort of accumulating points, accumulating activity, and then at whatever point you want to kind of turn that into a marketing qualified lead, an MQL, you do that. You also touch on something that I think is really fascinating, and I've worked with a lot of different firms where this is kind of a different idea. There's so much data out there, and everything's tracked, and I think there's nothing creepier than too much too early contact. I'll have an advisor, someone reach out to me and they'll say, so and so visited my website, what should I do? I'll say, okay, that's good. Maybe, I don't know about you or me, it's one thing to get a note, an email from Amazon, hey, you abandoned your cart, here's a discount. It's another thing to say, hey, I saw you visited my website, want to buy? It's just it's that whole balance, and it's kind of like weighing that intent. So I think you kind of got to keep that in mind too. You can't go too early, but somebody visits your website, it's a great idea. Add them to your mailing list. Invite them to follow your LinkedIn and your Facebook page. Now they're kind of in your queue. They're in that hopper for you, and like you said, kind of work them down there and then nurture them along to the point that they're ready to talk.
Yeah, there's a good balance in there, Joe, because it's bad to be aggressive too early. And I think that's an important point. But there's also, I see time and time again, abandoning too early, where we go, oh, we didn't get enough MQLs, or we didn't get enough success. And then, everyone raises their hands, they're like, oh, that was a failed experiment. And I think there has to be this level of persistency with marketing, going, okay, where do I need to be? Okay, we know email is an effective channel. We hate it, but we know it's effective. But there's so many other places we can be. Do we need to be on LinkedIn more? Do we need to be on Reddit potentially? Because that's a huge hidden opportunity to be out there and talking about the things that matter to our brands. Where do we need to be to serve that target buyer that we're trying to attract? And in our world, it's always complicated. It usually, very rarely is it direct to whatever. It's always the advisor to the client, or maybe it's the home office to the advisor to the client, or maybe it's the home office to the call center to the advisor to the client. Like, our industry is already complex, so you can't abandon anything too early, because sometimes it's so hard to get your message to that target audience that you might need 3 or 6 months to actually fully vet if a campaign was effective or not. Now, I'm not saying you don't pivot and iterate throughout those 3 to 6 months, but don't say 3 emails and then, yep, success or failure. I think you have to give yourself some grace as a marketer and a communications person to say, okay, let's keep going after it. What did we learn from this first wave that we could report to our leadership team that can then inform the second wave, and then the third wave, and then the fourth wave? Because what you want to do is actually bring everyone along with you on that journey as a communications person. It's our journey, not your, unfortunately we have to do all the work, but it's our journey as a company that we're moving forward. And so what I'd hope, you know, to get across to everyone today is really just be intellectually curious what worked and what didn't work, you know, get into the data, like you said, Joe, and find out how many people opened or liked something, but then go, okay, what do I want to change about that? What do I want to move? And it will just like, it'll organically take you on to a path that you didn't set out to be on, but it's the right path, because what you're doing is you're learning those behaviors about your target audience. And if you just listen, the answers are there. It's like, and you have all the tools to work on it. So I think that, you know, it's that blend of like, don't go the hard sell email 1 and don't abandon it after email 3 because you didn't get, you know, really just kind of find that cadence that's right for this particular topic with this particular audience. Because if I know one thing, there's not one journey that's tried and true. You can't say it's a 5 email sequence, they're going to convert, not, you know, and I'm going to set my clock by it. You can't promise sales that. And so what you have to do is kind of understand what that looks like. But I tell you what, most firms abandon way too early.
I'd agree. And isn't it funny when you think in your mind, okay, this is going to be a 3 or 5 or 7, you know, touch point type of campaign, and then you hit somebody on the first one, you say, oh my God, like what a great bonus, you know, isn't that amazing? I think so for anyone who uses, you know, like marketing software like HubSpot or Pardot or things like that, it's very visual in my mind. But I can picture it kind of, I hate that stop sign at the end of the journey. So it's almost like you build a workflow, like, okay, on day 1, send this email, on day 3, send this email, and da da da. And then at the end, there's always that big red stop sign. And I don't like that. I think you always need to have, whether it's wait 90 days and start over, whether it's, you know, go a week and put them into your monthly blog updates type of thing. I think everybody should, once they're in your queue, not to be aggressive, but to say like until they're not in there, they're kind of fair game. You know, you can, but it all goes back to what is the content you know, you're communicating. How are you trying to reach out to them? You obviously don't want to be calling them every single day or emailing them, you know, every week type of thing. It's that balance. But I think that you're absolutely right. You can't be afraid. It's kind of like you know, you kind of keep going until somebody says no. And I always kind of, from my sales days, I live by this mantra. They say no and you say next. It's like, okay, I got plenty more in the pipeline. I'm bringing more in the pipeline. You know, maybe this is not the right fit at the right time. And it kind of leads to, there's another point that I love working with. You kind of need to build that top of the pipeline, bring the prospects through the door. You need to nurture them through till they're ready for the sale. But I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that probably a lot of the people on this call already have and can really, you know, could go today and look at their list and say, here's people I could reach out to. And that is the, like you said, the people who you've kind of abandoned, they're kind of floating there and they're there and maybe you haven't reached out to them in a couple of weeks, couple months. You know, maybe they were referred, you haven't quite gotten to them. I think once you kind of re-engage people like that, you'd be surprised at who picks up again, kind of starting that activity over. If you waited too long, start them at the beginning again. I mean, maybe you haven't talked to them for a year. Say, hey, my first email is going to be, hey, you know, here's about my firm or here's about me. Maybe you know me, maybe you don't or whatever. Maybe you need to start kind of higher level with that. And then the other one I always like to touch on is the closed loss business. And if you have the lost reason or the reason they didn't buy, that's, I mean, that's gold. That data right there is gold, because I'll look through and say, not the right time to buy. Okay, it's been 6 months. Hey, Bill, is now the right time? You know, or price point. Okay, hey, I can reach out. I can give you 10% off right now. So I think a lot of people, it's all that data. A lot of people have this data and it's sitting somewhere, either on a desk or you know, on the hard drive. And that's such low hanging fruit. Reach out to the people who you sort of have disengaged with. Reach out to the people who said no, not right now, or can't afford it, or whatever, you know, whatever the reasonable reasons were, and just start them over again. It reignites your pipeline. It's kind of half the work of bringing them through the door. You already got them in the door. That's all the work right there.
Absolutely. So thank you guys. I feel like we answered the 2 questions that were put in the chat, but if anyone wants further clarification, feel free. We're always here to help with that. So just putting a pinpoint in one of the points, I believe, Joe, that you had mentioned. So as far as referrals and content marketing, so Nitrogen actually recently came out with a study of advisors and investors. From the advisor standpoint, this was the first year that actually referrals were beaten by content marketing. So they felt like they got more leads from their content marketing. So, is this the beginning of that shift? Is it just an off year? Who knows? But definitely something for everybody to keep in mind, that referrals aren't that steady source necessarily that we hope that they are. But so another point about data. So I feel like we're also at this confluence in time of personalization, and that everything needs to be, how hyper personalized. And to Joe's point, are you, creepy and getting into, my house basically versus just, my raw data. So where do you feel like we are with that when it comes to data?
So I think that kind of goes back to, again, that level of sophistication of, I think it's very easy and it's kind of like built in when you're sending an email, you insert that personalization, dear, and then first name. And I think that, even that, it sounds like, oh, it's puny, but even that's kind of like a good first step. You get in that personalization. I think it's interesting you say that Nitrogen had that study, because I'm surprised it took that long. I mean, to me, referrals are referrals, but we're all content marketers. We're all, marketing people. We know that this is gold. I mean, this is how you reach people. I'd say there's the level, like you said, balancing that privacy with the precision, and especially within the financial services, marketplace and things. It can be, there's compliance, there's all kinds of legal things. You don't want to go overboard with that. But I think that the better personalization is more built from that data, and then kind of what the content is or who it speaks to. So you use that data, like the income verification and the assets and things like that. And maybe you see that this person's age or whatever is sort of ripe for retirement. Okay, maybe they're going to be more responsive to conversations about upcoming retirement or content about upcoming retirement. It's just more matching that data with the appropriate content. And I think that that's a step that's kind of the missing link. A lot of people, you have that content or you have those talking points, you really know what you're doing, you're a great advisor, and then you can get that data, however you want to do it, and you have it, but then how do you connect that? What do you actually do with it? It's one of the things I'm most excited about with this True Wealth. I just want to work with advisors and see, learn from them and kind of teach. You have this data, it's available to you. Now, what do you do with it? How do you actually reach those people? And the answer is hit them with content, hit them with thought leadership, position yourself as a leader and as a trusted resource, kind of fill the gap, solve those problems, solve those pain points for people. And I think you can't lose.
I do think that advisors of the future and really firms of the future are going to be more holistic in nature. Like, they're going to want to serve the whole client. And I think a lot of advisory relationships come through with just the investment management aspect. But now they're like, okay, how can you help me with estate planning and taxes, and, like you said, obviously retirement planning, but all these other elements that make up the story of your life as an investor. And firms of all shapes and sizes in our industry are trying to solve for that. And so, as the person closest to that relationship, you have to understand, how do you bring that into your firm, right? How does an advisor look at what type of service they want to provide? How do they want to be known in the community? And, what types of people do they want to attract? And do they have the right level of competencies and people in the office to help them execute on that? Because I do think many folks have gotten into the industry through the door of investment management, but I think clients are coming into the advisor's door saying, no, I thought you did everything. I want everything from you. And so I think that your conversations, Joe, that you're having with folks, like, that really helps them go, oh, okay, let me put some order to that. Let me put some structure to that. Let me see what kind of information is available on my book of business. What information can you give me about people that I want to attract into my business? And then how do I line up a service model to all of that? And I think in some ways it kind of simplifies it, but it also shows that you can do well beyond just the investment management capabilities. And I think it's a misperception. I think many clients walking in just assume that it can all be done. You're my trusted source, so you can take care of all of me, right? And that's not always the case. So I think that the advisors of the future are going to have these practices that are built of teams that can handle, life stages and different core competencies as you need financial advice throughout the course of your life.
Yeah, I love that kind of the holistic again, and that's going to, rather than the prospect journey, that's going to the life journey. I mean, that's, I think, before coming into the industry, in my mind, an advisor was an old man with his feet up on the desk, smoking a cigar, trading stocks. You know what I mean? And that's obviously antiquated, and hopefully you're not the type of, we don't have those type of advisors. But I heard a great kind of slogan or line years ago that they said, as an advisor, you want to be the third person to get a call when some major life events happen, life events happens, whether it's a death, a marriage, a divorce. You want that person should contact their family, their lawyer, and their financial advisor. And I thought to myself, my family and I have a great financial advisor, and I thought, yes, that would be the case. They'd be the second or third person we contact. But I feel like that's pretty rare, and that you need to position yourself. And I think that's where the two of you really, really work, with a lot of these advisors in these firms, of being the expert, being the trusted person, having that relationship that goes beyond kind of financial advice. It's life advice. It's really being there for the person. I mean, as an advisor, you're dealing with people's, most intimate details and life and everything about them. It's scary. And I think being a trusted advisor like that, and really coming across that way really, really speaks volumes. And I think that's a key to success as well.
Absolutely. So, when it comes to getting the kind of data to give the advisors these quality leads, so, versus trying to shoehorn somebody into their practice, really getting them that person who's going to be, that brand champion for them at the end. Where do you guys feel like you're finding that data, or what are some best practices for that?
Joe, you are the expert on this one.
Yeah, I'd say let me do a plug, for two with my Powerlytics. But I think that, like I said, it's data. We really work hard to provide what we could call a frictionless data or a frictionless experience. I think you think when you log into your credit card to pay the bill, and it'll say, hey, can you update your income, or what like type of thing. What age are you? Kind of gauging that information. And to me, that's an example of what I'd call friction. I don't want to do that. I just click the X on that. And what somebody like Powerlytics or data providers can do is, they're using that for their loan decisioning. They're using that for their risk tolerance. They're using that for their marketing capabilities. And but that's friction. What I want to get is that frictionless data. I don't want to have to rely on the consumer to log in or to link up with Plaid and connect their accounts, and then they forget the login and this and that. I want data that is timely, precise, and meaningful. And I think that it's very rare that you have a provider or kind of source that all that comes from. It might be timely from the consumer, but maybe it's not accurate, or there could be all kinds of reasons for that. So I'd say that the less you have to ask and grill the person, the better. I think that's just the more you can discover around that. I think it is a very valuable source for data.
And then it seems like that's like the perfect trifecta to be able to take action on it. If it's accurate and it's relevant and it's timely, you can actually, do something that could be beneficial to the firm. So
Yeah.
I think that is what is helpful there.
I love it. It's kind of, it goes back to a lot of our different points to reach out and things. And this is not necessarily like a demographic data point, but how many times you get an email that'll say, thanks for attending our webinar, or thanks for coming to this conference, and I said, I didn't go, or I was on the list, but I never showed up, type of thing. And that's the biggest turnoff to me when there's not, just the bare bones amount of that. And so that's like a great example of just like poor data that okay, now I think, okay, that's kind of annoying. It sort of makes you look bad. If I wasn't sure before, maybe I'm not going to contact you now. So it's just a great example of something that as personally kind of bugs me, and I know we're all guilty of it, and sometimes do it without trying. But I just got one the other day, and it said, great to meet you at this conference. I wasn't at that conference. I was probably on your list somewhere, but okay, thanks. You're welcome.
Well, Allie and I can attest to the negative impact of coming off as tone deaf in that instance is what, you don't know me. And that's what that message is sending. And that's a really deep hole you have to crawl out of as a brand. And it's hard work.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'll give you with that kind of timely data, and this is again like everything at Powerlytics is off that IRS. So hopefully the information you're sending the IRS is accurate, because they'll tell you if it's not. But I have, for those who know me, I have kind of a unique name, and my dad and my grandpa had the last name, same full name. And I can't tell you how many times one of the three of us will get mail for the other. Or my grandfather's been dead for years, and we'll still get kind of updates from somebody or asking for something. I think that, boy, nothing's a you know bigger red flag than somebody who's sending me something intended for my dad, or type of thing. Just got the names mixed up. And I think it's just such an easily avoidable type thing if you have the right data, if you have that accurate data, and it's like it's not even there.
On the opposite side of things, so obviously we've seen a lot of what happens when the data is bad. How do you guys feel like it's made the difference or helped a client in this situation where, gosh, like we got really great data and we just helped them take off?
So I think
Well,
going to that kind of that life cycle stage, different events in the life journey. I think that there are a lot of times where I always love looking at like website data, and they'll say so and so found you, or so and so came organically to the page, or did they search, or this or that. You might find people that don't even know the question to ask or know what they're looking for. And if you have that data and you say, oh, so and so just moved into the zip code, their income is at this level that I want to be working with, maybe they weren't reaching out, or maybe they weren't looking for an advisor, maybe they weren't looking for advice, but now you can reach them. And I think, and then it goes down to, do you send them the right message at the right time, at the right cadence, type of thing. But I think it's more being proactive. You can't sit around and wait for those referrals. You can't sit around and wait for people, to email you or call you. This is the type of data that you use to be proactive, and to really reach out to people who might not know you're there or might not know what you do, and really bring them through the door.
yeah, I would add, I think that's well said. And it's just those life transition moments, life triggers, however you want to term it. It gives you an opportunity to kind of run a play against that. So if they've just moved, great, then, create that playbook for, people entering your community for the first time and welcoming them. That would be a very different content strategy, an email or a personal note that you would write to them than, some other life in transition or trigger event. So I think in some ways, when you have that information, like, to me, it sounds like after someone meets with you, Joe, they're able to really get a better understanding of all the ways that they can engage with their target audience. And now it's like, okay, well, now the fun begins, in my opinion, because it's like, okay, this is what we do. We serve this market, let's tell their story to this person. And, nothing's better than getting into, a boardroom or a conference room and being able to whiteboard, the person that you're talking to, like, let's create a campaign for that. Let's create narrative around that. And then let's push that out. I mean, that's an exciting exercise for a management team and their marketing team and their sales team to, come together around. And it sounds like, some of the work you're doing, Joe, allows firms to be able to do that and really go out there and run some different types of campaigns based on different target audiences, or different, not necessarily different target audiences necessarily, but maybe different entry points. You know, maybe they'll enter through a different door into your business, and that's okay as long as they come in, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that's exactly what you know, a fractional CMO or you know, some sort of some resource like you do, working with them. I love. I remember years ago I would do a lot of financial auditing and different things, and I'd provide all these reports, and you have stacks and stacks of spreadsheets and data, and I think nobody's going to do anything with this. It's okay, it's there, and I think that there's that piece. You can get the data. You probably, you know, you could download a list of names or zip codes or things like that. But if it's not really meaningful, and if you're not going to do anything with it, and I think that's where kind of like that tie between the data that I would be working with and providing, and then the marketing and the strategy that the two of you would be providing, you know, or similar, it really comes together. You have that meaningful data, you have actionable data, and you know what to do with it. You're actually going to use it. And I think going to that too, I'd be really surprised. I think people have more information and more data than they think. Just going back to like that kind of talking about that behavioral data and things like that, there's a lot of information out there that you probably have already captured, or if you use, and this is where like Allie, you'd be like, this is where you know the drill. You have to know how to interpret it and what to do with it. You know what it means. It might be. I was laughing because I was using a software the other day and just looking up some information about different advisors and things, and I could sort by hobbies, and I thought, what an interesting, you know, okay. And the one advisor I searched, it said the hobby was running, and I said, I know him. He's not, he hasn't been running for a little while. But I just love that kind of stuff in there. And it's like, to me, that's not necessarily usable, but it could be. You know, maybe I want to run a campaign or reach out. Now, for an advisor, that's a very personal touch point. I think that's very valuable, you know, or kind of offering if you're part of a social organization or have an alum of a certain school or things like that. It's like it's all that data that you can speak to and use, and once you have it, it's you probably already have it now and just don't know how to look for it, but that's where it is.
I love all that. So even if you take that from the PR perspective, so, you know, ultimately you could be doing PR just for the sake of like, look, we're doing brand awareness, we're trying to get more of our name out there, and that's a worthy objective and totally fine. But at the end of the day, if you're not trying to do that PR and trying to get that end client and trying to speak to them in that way that they want to be spoken to and get them at that life point, then you know, like we're just kind of chucking things out to the void instead of trying to really communicate with someone so that I'm really talking to you and not just you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
even in PR, I think it's very valuable. You're you know you're offering press releases and information to the right media who's going to be, you know, reachable by your prospect audiences. You're not sending, oh, this new fintech firm is out there. You're not announcing it on, you know, some other industry publication or type of thing. So it's very much using that data, you know, kind of using that data to reach the audience that you want to.
Yeah, you're building credibility, of that you are an expert in what you do. And I think that people look at that as a criteria when they're making a decision about you and to work with you.
thank you. But so Joe, and you guys were all kind of pointing out the, you know, increased credibility and being able to use that data in that way, but that we might even have the data that we need but not realize it. So Joe, if you don't mind going through what Powerlytics offering is and that kind of data that, you know, people might have right in front of them, but they just can't see it for whatever reason.
Yeah, sure. So our brand new product, like I said, coming very shortly. We're calling it True Wealth, and it is kind of an offshoot of what we've been doing for years and years. We have a lot of data information available for banks, credit unions, lenders, things like that. And as the company has grown, we've brought in a lot of myself and other kind of wealth management focused people, and identified that there is really a gap there. You know, there's a lot of advisors that could just download a list of names, and then how accurate is it? How up to date is it? What, you know, what do you do with it type of thing? So what we're providing is that accurate, more precise, kind of better data, and then and easy access to it. It's income verification, it's listing of investable assets, it's demographic information. For example, you could search by a certain zip code and say, give me all people who have this income between this level in this zip code, and provide names, addresses, email, contact information, and all that. And it's all backed by the IRS. So it's all very accurate. It's all very up to date. It's not going to be self-reported necessarily. It's not going to be out of date type information. And then what that data we want to use to just to enhance that to the as a core growth mechanism beyond referrals, beyond kind of recommendations, that you can be proactive with it, that advisors and firms can use that to contact people and, like we were saying before, get the most bang for their buck. It's data that you can slice and dice however which way, and we have a team that can work with you to kind of go over that, and that's where the two of you, that's your expertise. Okay, I'm an advisor. Here's my value pitch. Here's who I want to reach. Let's see who they are, and then, hey, Powerlytics, these are the people I want to reach. I specialize in ultra high net worth pre-retirees, or I work with Henrys, or whatever you want to do, and you can get that information then and then reach out to them. So I think it's just a huge missing piece that I'm really excited for. It's very valuable. I think it's very valuable, across the industry, just to know who's out there, have that data available, and know that it's accurate and precise and usable.
Absolutely. So Allie, if Joe were to give you all these wonderful nuggets for your clients, what would you be doing with them?
So there is not one activity or channel for a marketer to succeed. So having this information, it just equips you with what you need to be able to succeed in today's environment. I mean, we are literally in an era where AI has infiltrated everything we're doing, and people are trying to sort through how does that fit into building your brand? How is the game changing? And so I think having the information that you can get from the types of target audiences you want to serve allows you then to take the next step, which is, okay, answer the questions of how do you help them? What problems are you solving? Where do you fit into, their lives? And then being able to tell that story. So it makes me very excited about that.
From a prospect standpoint, so how long do you think that it would take once you get these beautiful pieces of data from Joe? How long then until you start, being able to get that content out to the right kind of audiences, or does it depend on, whether you're doing it on social or emails or content or other things?
Yeah, I think firms, again, need to give themselves grace and practice, maybe crawl, walk, run fundamentals. So get the things in. You're already doing a million things. You're a marketer, right? And so you've already been able to spin quite a few plates in the air already. So I think what it does is, again, you take one area and then you just start to just tweak it a bit, iterate. Okay, are we going to adjust our email strategy? Are we going to be more personalized on our approach? Are we going to say, okay, we're going to, send this to the high net worth folks? Are we going to send this to a different cohort? And you just start to implement change incrementally. And then, looking at how is that impacting what you're putting out on social? Because what you'll do is you'll be able to get those insights. It'll adjust kind of your narrative, your external narrative for your website, your blogs, your social, those types of platforms. But I mean, look, you never get there. It's like, you never have less than 100 things on your to-do list as a marketer, right? There is no holy grail of campaigns. It's like, what you do is you just keep going after it and you keep adjusting ever so slightly. And I think these types of tools and this relationship with a business and Powerlytics allows you to say, okay, I can deliver more custom bespoke content to the types of audience I want to serve. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Why wouldn't I want to deliver that in a way that's more meaningful? It just, it makes it, it brings a bit of authenticity to your brand. And it just sets you apart from people that aren't trying that hard or acting as if they don't care, because, it's how you make people feel, right? And if you are able to send messages that say, we understand, we're like you, we understand what you're going through, here's how we help. it just makes you want to pick up the phone and call or fill out the form or come in for that appointment or, you know, download a piece of information or follow you and read your LinkedIn posts. Because, you know, what AI can't replace is that human to human connection and that feeling that we create as a brand. And why would you, I mean, if we have to spend all these hours working, why wouldn't we be doing that, you know, with the people we love to work with inside, but also attracting wonderful clients externally, you know? I mean, so it's like life's too short to, you know, put out crappy content and drink bad wine.
Yeah. Exclamation points. So Joe, as you guys were talking, I was thinking another way to potentially use your data, and I'd be curious if you feel like that's the case, since obviously you're the expert. But you know, so some advisors, for instance, I'll take mine without throwing them under the bus. You know, will say I work with millennials. But so I'm a geriatric millennial. It's a wide range between me and the end of the list. So do you think that this could help somebody, you know, take that data and say, yes, I work with millennials, but I work with millennials who are solopreneurs, who are, you know, 40 and under, and, you know, they live in this area, and that is now my niche, and I'm going to just own that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it comes down to that granularity and the accuracy and precision. And I'll take umbrage because if you're a geriatric millennial, I'd throw the rest of us in that group too. So let's just say experienced, seasoned millennial. Um, yeah, no, yes, it's definitely like I said. As a marketer, I love getting into kind of that slicing and dicing and how do you segment this and that. And I know that the average person is not going to be doing that. But I think our product makes it very easy to enter some parameters, kind of play around with it, say, okay, well, this can, you know, this maybe I need to widen my breadth a little bit, or maybe I need to narrow it down. I'm looking at people between this age group and this income level. There's hundreds of thousands of them, or there's only 10. Do I want to reach that or more? So, and then I think it goes back to what Allie's saying. It's how do you message to them? Maybe you take that larger group and message them a bit more generically, or there's not as hard a push, but then you really go hard for that particular group with the exact appropriate content, the exact appropriate meaning and cadence and things. And I think that combination, you know, can really work well together.
Love it. So I realize we only have a few minutes left. So anyone who wants to get in their questions, please feel free, because we want to make sure that we're offering all the most valuable information that we can. But just as far as pain points and compliance, because I feel like that might be one area that we haven't touched on just yet. How do you feel like this data is helping from a compliance standpoint, just to not have to be worried, you know, gosh, I got to get the compliance guy in on this and bless that before I can even move forward?
Yeah, so it's all the data is publicly accessible. Like I said, it's all as a marketer, I love data. As a consumer, sometimes I'm kind of torn. You know, there's so much data out there, and it can be a little overwhelming what people can know about you. But it's nothing intrusive. It's all there, and it's all usable and meaningful, I think. And I think that's the key point. It's not necessarily, like I said before, just, you know, shoe size or hair color. You know, that can be meaningful to some people. In this case, we're going to be looking at stats and data that really makes a difference for you to market and win business with it.
Although, you know, if you want to use mine, redhead size 10, if you want to send me any shoes, I'm welcome to them.
I was going to say my hair color kind of, you know, adds me to a certain demographic. There you go.
Absolutely. Allie, go ahead.
Good. I think Joe answered that well with compliance. I think as long as they understand the source and they can trust it, there shouldn't be a compliance headwind.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. So we hope that everyone who was listening and anyone who's going to get the replay afterwards will find this incredibly helpful. If you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. So I'll send an email with Allie and Joe's information and my own in case you want to reach out. And then Joe, you're also going to be giving away a free demo, correct?
Yeah, we like I said, we're all set to launch probably very, very shortly on our True Wealth. Allie, I'm going to send you the link to our landing page if you wouldn't mind sharing it in the chat. But we have a website, you know, a web page up with information, a video to watch, and a form to be first notified. And we're going to be offering an early adopter discount as well. So depending on the purchase, you know, purchase level and time, please visit that website and reach out to me. My contact information is on there. I'd say follow the three of us on LinkedIn because we're very. I follow you guys, and I know we go back and forth, but I think we're all very entrenched in the industry and can be great resources for anybody watching.
We're always happy to help. We'll always help a fellow person, in the trenches and experiencing all the good, bad, and ugly.
Absolutely.
So thanks again to everybody. Allie, Joe, you guys are fabulous, and I appreciate all the insights that you shared, and thank you to everyone who was listening.
Thank you, Allie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, guys.